This episode is sponsored by dailygiving.org. A great organization gives out $1 on your behalf to over 40 amazing organizations. Check them out, dailygiving.org, dailygiving.org. So we're now entering into one of the greatest holidays of the year, the holiday of Shavuot. What's the mentality going in? What's our job? We're not given lots of things to study. We can't go to a mountain. What is the way that we should walk into this holiday to get the most out of it? So I heard an amazing story about a great rabbi named Rabbi Chaim Kreisworth. Rabbi Kreisworth was a great man. And in Jerusalem, there's a great yeshiva named after him, Toras Chaim. Rabbi Chaim Kreisworth was a young man during the Holocaust. And one day in the concentration camp that he was in, he encountered an older individual who came to him and said, "Listen, young man, I know my days are limited here. I'm a very wealthy person. And I have a bank account in Switzerland that I'm never going to be able to access. I want you to memorize the account number and whatever the right passcodes are. And if you survive, look for my children and give it to them." A couple of days later, this man was sent to the gas chambers. Chaim survived and came to Israel, and for years searched for his descendants and couldn't find anybody. One day he's sitting in a study hall, a base medrash, and he's speaking to a gentleman who is very poor. He was asking him for money, and this Rabbi Chaim was talking to him and trying to encourage him. This man was impoverished. And in the course of the conversation of him trying to encourage this man and to stay strong and to, do the best that he can with whatever little God provided for him, he asked him his name, and the guy told him his name, and that name was familiar to him. And after a second, he realized, wait a second, are you related to so-and-so, the man from the Holocaust? He goes, yeah, that was my grandfather. He died in the Holocaust. He said, well, take a seat. Your grandfather's a very wealthy man. Do you have enough money to go to Switzerland? And the man said, no. And together they cobbled enough dollars to send him to Switzerland, and he gave him the account number. And when this poor man, ended in Switzerland and gave over the account information, the banker said, because nobody touched the money for all these years, with interest, that account is now worth $30 million. Let me ask you a question. At what point did that man become wealthy? The poor man. When? When he spent the money? There are a lot of wealthy people that don't spend money. When his grandfather left it for him, he lived a very poor life. He was poor his whole life. What point did he transition from poor to wealthy? And the answer is the moment that he realized it. The moment that he realized that he had the access to $30 million. That moment that he got in his head that it's real. Probably the moment where the man, sort of looked at the passcodes and the account number and said, yeah, you're the beneficiary. There's $30 million here. That moment, before he spent a penny, the moment he had access to the information of what he had was the second that he went from being impoverished to being wealthy. What is Shavuot? What is Shavuos? Shavuos is the day in which we study the whole Torah. Shavuos is the day in which we celebrate the completion of the Torah. We have a day called Simchas Torah for that. Shavuos is the day in which God put us to a mountaintop. He didn't even give us anything then. He gave us 10 commandments, but really the Torah, Moses had to go up 40 days after Shavuos. Shouldn't we be celebrating when Moses came down? You got something? When we get to use the wealth? No. Shavuos is the remembrance of the moment that we realized how wealthy we are. It's the moment where we realize that we have access to divine information. That God's going to give us his book that will contain his light, that will civilize humanity, that will guide us in the most turbulent of times. We're sitting in a world where where people are making stuff up as they go. And we have a book that's divine. We have a code that's deeper than anything man made. We have the ability to connect to people across the world because of this book. We're only alive today as a nation because of the book. The real reason why I can go across the world, sit in a synagogue, pull off a book off the shelf and feel at home is because of the book. The only reason why we still have the Jewish people today, the only reason why most of the world even has the values that it has is because of the book. The overwhelming spring of wisdom that was given on that day has changed the world, and it changes our lives every day since. That moment, the Jews said, we're the wealthiest people in the world. We just got a piece of God. That feeling, that point, the crossover point, is what we're celebrating. That moment where you're under the chuppah and go, I'm the luckiest, and you have a whole life to figure that out. The moment where it begins. That's this holiday. My blessing, what we should be doing in this holiday, amongst the things that we do, don't let this holiday go past you. Fix your heart. Take a moment to just stop and appreciate how lucky we are that we have this. Whether you know a lot or don't know a lot, whether you're studying or you're not studying, whether you grew up with it in your hands in your community or whether you never knew of it when you grew up, it doesn't matter. We all, in a way, get to start from scratch. We all, in a way, get to begin again this holiday. And if at the very least, each of us takes a moment on this holiday, stops and says, I'm the luckiest, I'm the wealthiest, I have this wisdom, then maybe we'll start after Shavuot, or even on Shavuot, getting more serious about uncovering the wisdom, about studying the wisdom, about engaging in the wisdom. But not from the perspective of I have to or I should, from the perspective of that I get to. It's an honor to have such gift. It's an honor to be this wealthy. Chag Sameach. Happy holidays. Good Yantiv.